Due to the higher tensioning of the snare drum, touch tuning becomes secondary to eye tuning. Let's repeat the process we use for the bass drum with one exception. Apply additional downward pressure from the palm because the snare drum requires much higher tensioning. Go for it. You can't apply too much pressure. Okay, let's tune the snare head now. If you do not have a pitch source, tension the snare head using quarter key turns, one full cycle around the drum at a time. After each tuning cycle, place your thumb onto the edge of the head with your forefinger under the hoop and apply downward pressure into the head with your thumb. When the head reaches a proper tension, it should feel like you're pressing down on the surface of a volleyball. A little bit of give, then a feeling of it stopping. Continue the tuning cycle until you sense this feel. Tension the batter head in the same fashion until it is pitched higher than the snare head. Unlike the snare head, you should sense very little give from the thumb test. It should feel like you're pressing down onto a fully inflated bow basketball. Learn to make identical key moves. While tapping the edge of the head, continue tensioning until you match the pitch of the metronome by moving around the drum sequentially, clockwise or counterclockwise. As the pitch of the head gets close to where you like it, go to smaller, 8th key turns to tweak it in. Describing the touch in touch tuning is extremely difficult, but after a while you will sense the amount of pressure as it relates to sound. For instance, I can tell if the snare head is pitched too high or low just by pressing into it with my thumb. Now, go to the main menu, Drum Tuning, Sound and Design, and click on Snare Drum for more details. Now we'll do a visual inspection of the snare drum to check our work. With the light source in place, view the snare bed area and make certain all the wrinkles disappear. Now this might require additional tensioning of the head, but usually you can detune again without the wrinkles reappearing. It's a stretching thing, you know? It's very important now. I do not recommend excessive tensioning for seating, as this can often damage the head, especially the thinner snare drum head. It is always best to set a marginal tuning, play the drum for a while, and retune. If time is a constraint, then tension the head a little higher than the desired tuning range and then detune. Do not slam the head down with a torque wrench. You're not changing tires on a NASCAR. Focus your eyesight along the head surface, measuring the distance between the head and the top of the counter hoop. Now don't get anal about this. You don't have to get out a ruler. You can rely on your eye drawing a straight line from the head surface to the hoop edge. I'm using a ruler just to give you a clear depiction of it. Spin the drum around and look for evenness. You want to pay particular attention to the contour of the snare bed and take note of high and low spots. Make certain the hoop is even on each side of the snare bed's contour. Remember, the head in the hat concept, it may be necessary to loosen the adjacent or opposite tension rod to pull the head over to one side. This is a critical measurement because it controls the snare wire action. Let's talk about the snares for a moment. Throw the snares on and make sure they are properly aligned while under tension. Now throw the snares off and see if all the snare wires lie flat and none of the individual snare wires are distorted. Once the snare wires become distorted, in fact, even if one snare wire is distorted, more pressure will be placed against the head, and this will make the drum choke. If you want your snare drum to sound the very best, replace the snares when they look like cooked spaghetti. Flip the drum up on edge with the heads facing sideways. Slowly spin the drum like a wheel while eyeballing the distance between the tension casings and the bottom edge of the counter hoops. The lug casing should be nice and even relative to the bottom of the counter hoop. You can expect the bottom hoop to be a little closer to the casings due to this thin snare head stretching out. The snare head is 5 times thinner than the batter and will easily stretch out. The final view is to measure the amount of threads exposed in each tension rod. They should be similar, give or take a few threads. Snare hold downs. Now you may think this is unimportant, but it's very important because it controls the amount of pressure exerted to the bottom of the snare head. Okay, I have to hip you to this. Get rid of those white plastic snare straps that come packaged with generic snare wires. Ooh, gone. This material is way too rigid and chokes the drum. Again, too much pressure against the head. Replace them with reinforced packing tape, black nylon straps. You can find these at fabric stores, or snare cord. Here's how you adjust snare tension. Throw the snares on, and while lightly tapping the center of the batter head, tighten the snares until they sound crisp, and then over-tighten them until it makes the drum sound dull. Now loosen the snares while tapping until you reach a spot that feels and sounds good to you. There we go. You might find this helpful. Once I have my snares tensioned properly, I often tune the drum with the snares on. This way, I get a true depiction of how the drum actually sounds. When it comes to muffling, my philosophy is try to use a prepared head. That would be a pre-damped drum head before applying additional dampening. When it comes to externally mounted dampeners like rings, gels, duct tape, feminine napkins, okay, that's enough. I draw the line now. I just want to say, less is best. I'd love to show you all the creative dampening methods I've run into, but due to time constraints, I decided to show you a product I recently created for Evans drum heads. Check this out. It hooks onto the hoop and can be thrown on and off very easily. Pretty cool, huh? This method is minimal and totally adjustable. You can simulate something like this on your own, or you can spend a few bucks and get the real deal. Yeah, right. It is patented, by the way. You know how drummers complain about sympathetic snare buzz? Well, head dampening decreases snare buzzing, and this type of muffler decreases it significantly. It's really amazing, it really is.